Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Deb, your How to Love innovator. I say love is to hold someone or something in such high regard that you make the necessary sacrifice to stay connected to that someone or something. I want to talk about the sacrifice. To sacrifice is to I say it's to die to something. Is to relinquish your hold on something, to let go of something, is to die to it. It no longer is a part of your physical life or your spiritual life while you're in on the spiritual plane. Death is something that most people struggle with, whether it's a physical death or it's a spiritual death in terms of your reaction, your energy around something. And I want to submit that death is the most, first of all, natural thing, but it's when you're talking about the physical life and death, it is the most natural thing. It's going to happen naturally. However, the process, it's going to happen. But the death that I'm referring to now is in relationship to things that come between you and other people, that disconnect you from others. How can you begin to die to the need to be right? I talked about being right and being righteous. Die to the need to look for the worst in others. Die to the need to be heard rather than to hear. This is a difficult death to die. And it is something that you probably would most likely we will struggle with as long as we are in relationship with anyone or anything. How can we begin to think more about what the other person wants? And I'm just talking about in a conversation or even in a major decision. It is difficult. I can think some things now that I struggle with, but I'm struggling with it because I'm trying to make sure that while I do have things that I want, that I consider what it's like for the other person. And then I'm also struggling, trying to figure out how do I let go of what I want in favor of what the other person wants, especially when I'm struggling to see the good in or if I'm struggling to see that they're not even considering me or they're not considering the whole matter, the whole matter. Let's just use an example. I like to use examples so you can hear what I'm saying. Sometimes they come out right, sometimes they don't, because they're on the fly. The example of liking liking nuts in your cookies, liking pecans or walnuts in your cookies, and somebody you care about don't like those things in their cookies, and you making homemade cookies, or you buying cookies and you bringing them home, and is your roommate or your partner or your sibling, and they don't like nuts, but you keep buying nuts, and of course they just pick them out and eat everything else in the cookie. But to be but to consider them is to not buy nuts. Or to consider them is to buy two kinds of cookies. If you're making them, is to make two batches, one with nuts, one without nuts. That's an example of considering them. Because you love nuts in your cookies and in your cake. And let's take it just a little bit further. They cannot eat nuts at all. Cannot. In nothing. In nothing. Now, how does that change your response? Now, how does that change your response? Because what if you knew or realized that eating nuts is a death uh, provoking, I just made that up, would mean death for them. Now, what do you think about nuts? Would you bring nuts in the house now with that understanding? Here where I'm headed with this now. What is it about death, that kind of death, that all of a sudden changes you? You're born again, if you will, when you think about the greatest harm it could do the other person. No harm to yourself at all to not bring nuts in the house. None whatsoever. But it takes some kind of death to get you there, to get you to thinking totally about the other person and not about yourself. What is it about death that brings that out of us? And can you bring that same understanding of dying into the relationship that you have with somebody that you want to be connected to? That same kind of sacrifice to the relationship that is important to you because you guys are on the same team and you cannot win unless you play play nicely with each other, unless you act like a team. Now, how important is it for you to have your way? It is something to consider, because death in the physical sense is final. Again, when I talk about the physical plane, that's a whole nother matter if you're talking spiritually. But physical death, that in that body, that's it. So maybe we get that. And so we know the finality of that. And so it's easier for us to say, oh, he or she only has 24 hours to live. So I'm not bringing any cookies in this house because I've been bringing them in the whole time. Now I'm dealing with this idea that I've kind of helped cause her or his demise. Can you allow yourself to think like that in every situation? Can you be that kind of sacrificing? Do you love them enough? Do you know how to love them well enough to do that? Do you care enough to try to learn? And this just does not apply to you. It applies to them. So it for both of you, the same logic applies. Same logic. You can say, I realize you love nuts in your cookies, um, and I appreciate you for not bringing them in the house because it's not good for me. Hear the point here, people. Hear the process. Hear the message here. Love is to hold someone or something in such high regard that you make the necessary sacrifice. The you is plural, both of you, to stay connected to that someone or something. Necessary sacrifice. The one that means that you want to be connected to that person and you are willing to do whatever it takes. Again, we're talking about a mutual relationship. And even if we were not talking about a mutual relationship, you cannot lose. I say this all the time. You cannot lose doing what is right. You cannot lose being caring and giving. You cannot lose. And you have to decide if you want to be that person or if you can be that person or it's worth it for you to be that person. It's totally up to you. Again, I would say check in with your body, check in with your spirits, and check in with your mind and see how that feels. Then you make your decision. This has been Dr. Deborah. Love is a decision, and how to love is often a sacrifice. And it's up to you how you manage that. The next time, Dr. Deborah at howtolove.us. 800-361-9068. Hotalove.us, the website. You take really good care.